Welcome back to the Leading Detection podcast. So a lot of the time we cover fraud as a broad spectrum, but today we're really going to hone in on one specific area. So we're going to focus on scams and the kind of technology that we can leverage to prevent scams. And who else and better to speak to today than Boaz? And welcome.
Thanks, Matt. Great to be here.
Awesome. So scams, everyone's got the fear of scams. Everyone sees the increasing risk in scams as we switch to a digital world. But why is it important now to start talking more about this area?
Yeah, so I think, scams have always existed since the dawn of time. There have been people trying to impersonate other people since kind of humans existed. And then obviously things accelerated with the dawn of the internet. I think particularly there's a few interesting tailwinds from sort of the last 6 years. One is society is much more online, particularly post-COVID, particularly for, older folks. The use of AI has made it incredibly easy to increase the production quality and the sophistication of scams. So I think even when I was a kid, there was like Nigerian prince emails with terrible grammar, spelling, and there was very, very low throughput. And now you have flawless, exact replica, government websites, big corporate websites that's now super cheap to run. That's another advancement. And there's also historically very low prosecution rates when it comes to digital crime, less than 0.01% globally, and with a lot of data around how organized crime groups are moving into digital crime and the intersection between physical crime and digital crime. So, for example, people's phones getting stolen and then seeing a rise in kind of phishing attempts and other sort of elements. So all of those combine to, it's a much worse problem than it's ever been. In the UK alone, 8 million people have been affected in just the last 12 months. So those are a number of the tailwinds around why it's getting so much more kind of press attention. And then there's a few additional other elements around, now increased scrutiny and pressure from a regulatory perspective, where now banks in the UK have to reimburse customers if they've been scammed for certain types of scams. So that's also brought it to sort of national headline attention.
In the recent times that you've been, is it getting significantly worse, or is it getting more? Is it just the volume? Is it the press making it a bigger issue than it actually is? Where do you stand there?
I think it's genuinely, by all accounts, getting worse. I think depending on which country you're talking through, maybe from a UK perspective, the losses are more or less like growing relatively slowly, like the last few years, but the count is increasing. And one of the data points that's not really covered is it's not just about economic loss, is that there's often shame and trauma and psychological, emotional effects. And even if, let's say, you as Matt don't fall for the scam, if you've now given up sensitive information, and even though you, let's say, caught it during the act, now that your information is known to a scam or organized crime group, you are 4 times more likely to get scammed in the next 12 months. So that also, it's kind of a network effects of its own that like leads into the next year and kind of extrapolates beyond that. So what's the most interesting data that we see is the correlation between how different population groups are disproportionately affected by different types of scams. So for example, in the US and the UK, Gen Z and millennials are disproportionately affected by phishing links for e-commerce, because of the proliferation of e-commerce links on TikTok, Instagram, one-click checkouts, just buy, click, 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 job scams as well. Whereas older folks are more susceptible to bank impersonation messages, investment scams, romance scams. So like it is totally endemic in society and increasing, but certain types of scams are disproportionately affected, certain groups.
So it's kind of almost like a marketing scheme that the fraudsters are understanding the customers, not customers, but those that they're attacking, and really honing in on what those triggers are.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like these are fully fledged economic enterprises. They don't have their specialty skill sets, and they're collaborating online through the dark web to buy infrastructure to complete these scams. So maybe for phishing, it's more of like a mass market game where they know the throughput will be quite low and maybe the average loss is $500. And now it's like a quantity volume game. Whereas for romance scams and investment scams, it's much lower frequency, it's much more sophisticated, but the losses are much higher. So maybe I'm getting 100 grand from you versus how many younger people would I need to scam through some of the other methods to get to 100 grand is quite different. And you've got different skill sets required to pull off more elaborate scams. So it is literally a whole fully fledged industry in itself.
And do you think it's kind of an evolution of a career of a fraudster? Do you think they start off with the low level, high volume, develop the skills, and then end up in the much higher sophisticated? What do you think that career path might look like?
I mean, I haven't kind of spoken to anyone about their career path. I think there's a number of interesting books on this topic. I think there's a number of socio-economic and political elements. Like certain parts of the world have got, in inverted commas, like specializations. So, for example, West Africa is more of a hotbed for romance scams, and unfortunately, you have a young male population that don't have great economic opportunities, but they speak English. So they target elderly women in the UK and the US because they have nothing else to do. And that's a way to gain income, which is quite sad, and I wouldn't say they're forced into those things, but close enough. Whereas in Southeast Asia, you have these fully fledged scam compounds where the people perpetrating these scams are often victims themselves of human trafficking. So they've been duped by a job scam themselves. For example, people speak good English in the Philippines, they pay for a flight to Cambodia, and then you get kidnapped and enslaved in a scam compound. It's kind of like, what else? Like you're now forced to conduct these scams. So it's totally horrific. Can't even it's beyond almost imagination that other humans can do that to other humans. But, it is a dark place. So I think, why people do what they do is probably beyond the scope of the podcast. But yeah, I think there's certain trends which lead people into certain sectors.
So is the data that you've seen kind of show there are specific regions for specific types of fraud? Is it always further afield, or are we seeing it closer to home when it comes to these specific scams?
It's all over. I think particularly from our data, a vast majority is actually conducted outside of the UK and the US, with maybe the exception of investment scams, where people are leveraging sketchy company incorporation type structures and they have a UK presence, because often you do need that in order to extract money for particular investment schemes. So I think that maybe has more of a tinge. And then what is definitely hyper local, especially where I live in London, is the phone theft capital of Europe. And there's a bunch of articles, not just our data, where there's a link between those groups and China. And that's where the vast majority of those devices are being sent. So there's definitely sort of cross-border collaboration between local crime groups and international ones.
So is it kind of local regulation that's keeping it from the UK, for example, and making it super difficult, but overseas where the crime is actually being committed, it's a lot more of a grey area? Is that what the data would suggest?
I think there's definitely ties to state actors who actively fund and have incentives for those local crime groups to do it. So if you're a non-democratic country with basically no care for data privacy laws, there's a lot that's happening in some of those countries that are targeting citizens of the UK and the US and Western democracies. So there's definitely a trend there. And I think beyond that is just, it's like anything else, even with your line of work, talent is international, right? So you have an internet connection. You don't need to be a dodgy developer now to write malware or conduct scams. You just need an internet connection and basically speak English. And then you
Mm.
can work with a number of tools to perpetuate these scams. So there's more people living outside of the UK than inside it. So that's going to correlate to that.
Yeah, so this is kind of setting the scene of where these scams are originating from. Yourself and the team, you focus on the technology side and kind of leveraging technology to fight back. So what can be done? What are the kind of first steps, and how can we get a bit more complex in keeping up?
Yeah, so I think historically scams fall between cyber and fraud, whereas historically cyber was viewed as like infrastructure threats,
Mhm.
keeping your employees safe, devices safe. And then fraud was, someone's like compromised your account and there's been like money loss.
Yeah.
But about 50% of scams are authorized kind of scams where the person has been duped and they knowingly gave up information or transferred money. And that kind of sits between the two realms. And to solve that, a lot of the banks and governments would send out, and they continue to send out, these types of awareness information campaigns that say, Matt, don't get scammed before Christmas. Be wary of scammers trying to impersonate Amazon or a delivery parcel company. And that, unfortunately, is not going to cut it with the level of sophistication and the volume that is here today.
Mhm.
So like we kind of think about it in a few different ways. One is how can we give people easy to use tools to detect the dangerous signals that exist in things that they're going to buy, things that they're going to invest, communications. So that is like analyzing websites, email domains, phone numbers, and then the content in those messages for risk signals, because actually people have been taught to like spot the scam.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's just now led to overconfidence. And the key difference is when you're distracted, it's quite
Yeah.
hard to detect some of those things. So
Mhm.
step one is like, how do you have easy to use tools? And then step three is then like, how do you have more background monitoring, almost like a security camera in your house, kind of monitoring who's at the front door, who's entered inside the house. Like, how do you extrapolate that to your digital life? That's the more like advanced stuff. And I think it's quite a step to get people to opt in to that type of protection, but we think that's needed. So that's why we're focused more on the former, at least initially as an early stage startup, but very much actively working towards some of those more advanced features to sort of give that background monitoring protection to people.
Yeah. So are the tools readily available, or is the information readily available? Could someone, in theory, do this all themselves? Very time consuming, of course. Or is this more intelligence that has been built up, kind of proprietary intelligence that supports?
It's a bit of both. So I mean, for now, we're a B2B company, so you can access some of these tools through a bank and other financial institutions.
Mm.
We don't really have like, let's say, direct to consumer tools available. People could stitch a few things together themselves, but it would be very time consuming, and you'd basically end up building a product. I think the main thing that people can do is really like focus on understanding what a domain and a URL is, like
Mhm.
what is a safe and what is a dodgy URL. Some of that stuff becomes harder to spot because they're quite sophisticated. So like instead of lloydsbank.com, they'll put 3 L's instead of 2 L's.
Mm.
So it becomes much harder to see. So like that's where the advice starts getting a bit murky. But honestly, the biggest thing is most things are never urgent when it comes to time. So if anyone is putting you under pressure, the single most powerful thing that you can actually do is just to pause, to stop and just say like, I'll call you back, or I'm going to just check with my dad, my mum, my partner, and
Mhm.
just stop that interaction completely. Just shut it down, take a deep breath, call another person, like an actual person, and double check it with them. There's one of like the most low-fi things that you can do, which is proven to help mitigate, because a lot of these scams focus on persuasion techniques, manipulation techniques. They know what buttons to push. And that's actually the type of experience that we curate with our technology. But you don't need technology to pause. So just being mindful around it can have a huge impact.
Yeah, it's kind of slowing down. Is there ways the fraudsters can still be persuasive at a slower pace? Is that an area that you're seeing a rise in, that it isn't all about urgency because there's tools coming out? What's the kind of data suggesting there?
I think aside from romance scams and maybe a bit of investment scams, they almost always have an element of urgency because they're playing a volume game and, it'll be, it's winter, there's this new government allowance, heat, benefit that you can get if you install this type of like heating technology in your house. You get these HMRC credits. So they're using like, they know you're cold, it's seasonal, you want to try save money, and then the offer expires because people are familiar with like tax windows, right? So that's like a basic example and stuff that we see all the time. So almost always for mass scams, there's an element of urgency or too good to be true, or on the darker side is your account has been compromised, or your child is sick at school, or your family member's been in a car accident and we're just trying to get in touch to confirm the hospital details. I mean, one of the craziest ones I've seen recently is a friend of mine gave birth and literally got a text message from the hospital, from someone impersonating the hospital, basically saying like, congratulations on the birth of your daughter. Can you just confirm a few details here for our NHS records? So that's like linked.
How are they getting hold of this?
Yeah, I mean,
Sharing?
the biggest vulnerability are humans, unfortunately. So it's not even protecting your own data. Is there could be a compromise at that particular hospital somewhere along the chain. There's been some kind of leak, and they're leveraging like the urgency of the birth. And why wouldn't I want the hospital to have these records, right? So, pretty scary stuff.
It's got to be pulling data from all the different sources. It kind of shows the sophistication on the operation side.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how are we combating that? How are we taking our own data and our own information to kind of push back and keep up?
Yeah, so I think there's a number of cool companies like Falcon around what we do, which is people need more help. The help can come in a variety of ways. Like I said, so I think we believe that by the end of this decade, it will become commonplace to sort of have these safety checkers that you'll kind of have like a trusted companion to basically navigate your digital life. We believe that the banks as a brand are a well-placed, trustworthy entity because people expect those institutions to keep their money safe. And they're already cyber companies. They just don't market themselves as such. So I think leaning into more of these sorts of capabilities and easy to use safety tools is one element. And there's a variety of like direct to consumer tools that people can use to enhance their data privacy. But at the end of the day, you're going to need a mixture of different tools. It is just what it is. Like with all the benefits of using mobile and being able to like buy anything, and they're not actually a mobile, right? They're these mini computers. So one of the cons with such cutting edge technology in your pocket is now you're exposed to all of these vulnerabilities. Keeping up is a little bit tough, but there's plenty of cool companies out there that are trying to help out.
So you think that there'd be kind of like a personal guard that kind of sits around your device, sits around your activities, and just kind of checks the things that are flowing in and out?
Yep, I think there's different types of experiences. So if you want more passive background monitoring and you don't want to like be totally in control of checking individual things, I think that's like more of that sort of personal concierge bodyguard, as you called it. And then there's a number of more active tools where you don't kind of want that, but just when in doubt, you want to check it. I think those are some safety tools that already exist today. That's the type of stuff that we're building too. So I think society needs both.
And if you do your banking with a tier one, well-established bank, you do your subscriptions through well-known brands, Netflix, Spotify, you do all your shopping from Amazon, and you go to Tesco for your weekly shop. Are you immune to kind of fraud scams?
No, not at all. No one is immune. And just doing that, unfortunately, it's not just about you. It's like anyone close to you or anyone that you ever, you have a fingerprint of all of your data out there. So all it takes is any kind of compromise for your email, your phone number to be on any kind of a list. And then that's usually led to like the dark web. And then now people will start reaching out to you. Like it's very easy to validate what's a real email or phone number. And I mean, something that I've sort of thought about is like, okay, then do you need to get to a world where everyone has these like aliases with different emails, which Apple already provides, where you sign up for a form, you don't have to give your email, right? But then if you're signing up for NHS or like a government organization, you kind of have to use your real email.
Yeah.
That is everywhere. Maybe everyone needs like a secondary phone number, which is another element. Like maybe you only give your actual phone number to your close friends and family members, and your WhatsApp is very private, and then you give a secondary number to everyone else externally. And then you have to kind of manage both of those, almost like a burner phone. But that's like, yeah, even then you can't totally solve it. And then you start sounding like a crazy person. But those are the types of things to do it. But if you're giving out your number or email address, you're exposed. That's the simple reality.
I think Revolut, with their new SIM card, they have the option to have your burner SIM as well. So I think they're doing a lot with fraud thinking as well. And from the recruitment space, people have always set up new emails when they do job searches to kind of keep it separate and keep it away. If someone was to say, right, okay, my email might have been leaked, my phone number might be out there, I'm just going to start fresh again. So new email, new number. Is that a wise move to make when it comes to scams, or is it something that should be not advised?
I think depending on how bad the compromise or like the volume of what you're getting. I mean, this is kind of going slightly off topic. So like I use an email provider called hey.com. One of the nice features of Hey is they've got a screener feature. So they pick up whenever you've received an email for the first time, and then you click a button where you say accept or reject. And if you ever receive an email from that domain that you've rejected, you never see it. It goes into a hidden inbox. So that allows you to have a very clean inbox. So what I do is I don't give out that hey email to anyone except my close friends or family. It's never been used for any sign up for any company anywhere. And then I kept my old email, which I still use, and then I forward everything to that new one. So over time, it probably took like 3 months, basically cut down a significant portion of rubbish. So that's like something that I do. So I think it does add value to like reduce the noise. And I think I haven't done anything yet on the number. On the number side, I've used a service called Incogni, which will search your name and number on every database that's public. And then they will do GDPR right of refusal requests on your behalf. So you give them a small power of attorney, and then they force all of the data brokers to remove your data on your behalf. So that's quite a cool tool, and that's significantly reduced the number of recruiter calls I get, state agents, all of the stuff over the years as an adult that you have exposure to. Yeah. Between those two tools, that's quite powerful in kind of helping mitigate sort of the experience. But you'll always be exposed to scams as long as you're alive.
Yeah. And are you seeing kind of pushback from like marketing teams or product teams from these kind of tools when you're going out to market?
You mean selling Falcon, or just what do you mean?
Yeah, so with tools like that are looking for scam prevention, but of course there are companies that are trying to reach out, recruiters or real estate agents, marketers, new campaigns, all these kind of fresh email. Is there any pushback from these companies, or is it
Well, we don't really engage with them. It's not like we're not selling into marketing companies or estate agents or anything like that. I think for us, again, we're focused on sort of consumer safety tools being packaged to their consumers via like bank consumers and FI consumers. So probably some of those companies wouldn't be too happy with those sorts of tools. But I've always been a believer that the best products kind of sell themselves. So like if you need an estate agent, you'll get in touch with one.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's those aren't my customers. So I'm more focused from a consumer safety lens.
Okay. And this year, what are you putting together? What have you got planned? What are you going to think are going to be the hot areas to attack?
Yeah, so we are very much focused on increasing the number of clients that we're working with. We went live with our first batch of banks and FIs last year, so we're kind of building on top of that. We have a number of different touch points across an FI's journey where we embed these safety tools. So it's really adding new ones and then kind of maintaining accuracy. So we give sort of warning messaging and like risk responses based on what people check. So for product like ours, accuracy is a really big feature because you lose trust in the system. So
Yeah.
like doubling down and integrating with additional data sources and leveraging the first party data we have is really, really important. And then working towards that sort of passive experience that I mentioned with the background monitoring. That's a key focus area for us this year. And then I think the last piece is sort of tying it all together is what we sort of, what we call internally around like the safety network, where each check in the node really enhances the whole network because
Mhm.
that provides additional risk signals that you can go and investigate and sort of highlight scam infrastructure. So that sort of threat intelligence is incredibly valuable for banks, FIs, law enforcement agencies. So that really adds weight and credibility, from a sales point of view, but that, the message is every check that someone makes is basically helping to build out neighborhood watch for scams.
Mhm.
That's quite a powerful message. And that's very, very rare in the ecosystem. Like you have amazing companies that do amazing threat intelligence
Yeah.
elements, but none of them have any consumer application. So really coupling those two things is really our sweet spot.
So you kind of going B to B to C, trying to go through.
There's a B2B2C motion because the consumers are using kind of these bank branded tools powered
Mhm.
by Falcon. And so that's the consumer touch point, but they're not paying us. The bank is paying us.
Right. Okay. And do you prevent the transaction, or is it just advertising and
No,
risk
we
score?
depending on the tolerance of the bank, then we can help. So there's certain use cases that it's even before payment is made, so sort of pre-transaction, and
Yeah.
then during the transaction journey, let's say for someone wanting to make an investment or purchase, if the bank wants to deny the transaction based on that additional context that we provide, then absolutely they can cater for that.
Okay. Nice. And recent funding, big plans for this year?
Yeah, we closed our pre-seed last year. We got a decent sized team and probably kicking off our next fundraise at some point this year or potentially early next year. We've got quite a decent runway. So fortunately, yeah, can do it at a timeline that suits us. But that'll be the plan, is to do another fundraise and expand the team and expand the product.
Yeah. Amazing. And if people want to keep up with the work you're doing or any events, what have you got coming up?
I think the best point is to reach out on LinkedIn. That's Boaz Valkin. Reach out there and sort of give regular updates there and kind of post some interesting content too.
Amazing. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking this afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. Thanks.
Until next time. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.